So for anyone who grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s, you guys will remember the Disney direct-to-video sequels. These were everywhere. They came out all the time. And although at the time, most people thought very poorly of them, and a lot of people still do. I mean, they're kind of like the live-action remakes of today, just far less of a budget, and, you know, they were happening even more frequently, if you can believe it. But with that being said, this is a side of Disney that I've not really tackled much on the channel, and I've got a soft spot for a few of these. Not a lot. And just as a reminder before we begin, these are strictly my opinions. These are not definitive in any way. If you disagree, awesome. We need more variety in this world. So let's start with the worst of them. Is Fox and the Hound 2. Oh, y'all, this one hurts me. What happened here? I'm not even that big of a fan of the first Fox and the Hound. I don't think it's bad, but man, it feels like the people who made this never even watched the first movie to know how to make a sequel. And yeah, if you want to get technical, it's more like a midquel. As we move on, you'll see all of these movies typically fall into 4 camps. Usually it's either an actual sequel, a midquel, 3 episodes of a TV show, even if this TV show never aired, or the beginning or end to a series that aired on Disney Channel. And that's the thing with this. This one is a midquel, but the entire premise of the first movie is that a fox and a hound shouldn't be friends, right? That's what the entire premise of the movie was. Everyone from their childhood onward is like, this is weird, it's not gonna work, and you watch the drama and tragedy unfold. Whereas here, guess what the premise of the movie is? Copper wants to be a country western singing dog. And that's it. And yeah, him wanting to be a part of this band does hurt his relationship with Todd. So yeah, you could say it's a story about their friendship, but it's never challenged about them being a fox and a hound. Every new character they meet is like, oh, a fox and a hound are friends? Alright, nothing weird here. Why did all the tragedy in the first movie need to happen if nobody cares? I mean, in all honesty, it kind of feels like a movie that was pitched to Disney as like an original story, and the executives looked at it and said, you know what? It's missing something. Our established IPs. Let's throw in Todd and Copper and call it a day. I mean, I don't think that's what happened, but it sure feels like that's what happened with it. It kind of feels like those Tom and Jerry movies where they just shove Tom and Jerry into like the Wizard of Oz and they call it a day. That's kind of what this feels like. Cause like Todd and Copper don't even feel like the main characters. It really feels like the Reba dog and the Patrick Swayze dog are the main characters. I know they have names in the movie, but I will never remember them. It's just the Reba dog and the Patrick Swayze dog. It feels like the main story is wrapping around them because they learn the most and they go through the most, and Todd and Copper are just kind of there as catalysts to make their story happen. And then there's this whole thing with the band having to be these singing strays, and you can't be part of the band unless you're a stray. But even then, none of these dogs are actually strays because they have a manager who's acting like an owner, and this owner is like taking them all over the place. So yeah, they effectively have an owner. They just may not use the word owner or have a collar, but they're still being taken care of by another human being. How is that a stray? I don't understand the logic in this movie, and I don't understand how it's connected to the first one. It's dumb. The animation is weirdly good for how dumb the movie is, and I do kind of like Reba. I just like Reba. I like her music and I like her acting. I just think she's fun. But other than that, I don't care a lick about this movie. Okay, let's leave Fox and the Hound 2 for... oh, Hunchback 2. Oh, this list is gonna be harder to get through than I thought. Oh, everything about this movie just seems like a really steep downgrade. From the writing, to the characters, to the animation, to the motivations, to everything. Hunchback 1 is truly an underrated gem and is truly a masterpiece in the Disney pantheon, but this... oh, this just hurts to see how far this franchise has fallen. I feel like this movie just exists because the people who have never read the original Hunchback or knew anything about it was sad that Quasimodo didn't get the girl at the end of the movie. And they're like, okay, let's give Quasimodo a girl. Alright, how are we gonna do this? As painfully obvious and by the numbers as we possibly can. Great! Let's do it. It may seem kind of weird, but one of my biggest problems with this movie is that I liked how they left Quasimodo at the end of the first movie. I liked him not getting the girl at the end, which I know makes me sound like a jerk, because I'm sitting there going, yeah, don't give Quasimodo a girlfriend, even though that's exactly what he wants. No, I actually found it really beautiful. It's kind of cool to have a movie where there's a guy who really wants to be in a relationship, but he doesn't get it, but also sees how much value and worth he has in the community around him without it. His acceptance into the community is the great moment, not him being with Esmeralda. I don't know, I've also just been a fan of bittersweet endings where you can still find the good in things even though it's not exactly what you want. I find something really beautiful in those moments, and I felt like Hunchback really did a great job at that landing. And this just retcons all of it, not even in a fun way. All the sidekicks from the first movie are just not funny. The main characters are just not engaging anymore. Everything just feels bland and forgettable. And honestly, the thing I remember most about this movie is that it came out on my birthday. Strike that, as of editing this video, I was wrong, it didn't come out on my birthday. It was supposed to, and then it got pushed back to March. I just remember seeing a trailer in front of one of my VHSs that said, coming to OWN on August 28th, and yeah, that didn't even happen. But let's move on from this. Next we have Mulan 2, and I guess for all intensive purposes, it's not horrendous. But the thing that really kills the movie the most for me is that Mushu's not even a fun character anymore. Like, Mushu was my favorite thing about the first movie. I loved his lines, I love his character, I thought he was hilarious, I love seeing him. But here, he's just annoying, he's a jerk, and I don't want anything to do with him. Mulan is fine, I guess. They gave Mulan and Shang this really contrived, like, you know, if we just sat down and talked for 2 minutes, we could work out all of our issues, but we're not going to do that because, you know, the movie needs to happen. And then there's this whole thing where they make you feel like Shang died and he didn't. It was weirdly dark. You know, the guys from the army getting to fall in love with these girls, that part's kind of cute. But other than that, I don't know. Mulan and Shang just really needed to talk to each other, and Mushu needed to shut his dadgum mouth, because he was not fun to listen to the whole movie. Belle's Magical World, honestly, kind of makes me laugh, but in a completely ironic way. So Belle's Magical World was 100% supposed to be a series. It's like they were trying to make a series about Beauty and the Beast, but they ran into a couple of issues like, oh yeah, if we continue the story, the prince is no longer a beast. He's a human now. And honestly, who wants to see that, because the beast is more marketable? So there's that stitch of time where we didn't see anything happen, and let's just flesh that out. But then they run into a new problem of, oh, that time that we time jumped in the movie is when the beast was a horrible jerk and nobody wanted to be with him. And it's so, they're like, let's try to make a series happen here. And oh gosh, thank goodness this show never made it to air. Thank goodness. The 3 episodes we got, I gotta say, are kind of hilarious in how dumb the conflicts are. Like, there's one where Beast is mad that Belle is looking after a baby bird. Like, what kind of stupid level of temper tantrums do you need to be mad that someone is taking care of a baby bird? Like, what is it? And some of these looks are priceless. If you guys have seen this meme with Belle and like her eyes are kind of a little off kilter, it came from this movie. Y'all, it is so stupid. It did not need to exist. The show would have been horrendous. I am so glad that the show never existed, but I'm also glad we got this. It's stupid and horrible, and I could never say that this is a good movie, but I must admit, I find myself laughing at it by just how dumb parts of this are. Alright, next up we have Cinderella 2, Dreams Come True. And let me be clear, my dream did not come true, because this movie is as bland and boring as all get out. It's not bad enough for me to really get mad at, but it's not good enough for me to defend in any way. I mean, the animation looks kind of nice. It's another 3 short stories, so I think maybe they were trying to make a TV show at one point and realized, yeah, maybe that's not the smartest idea because we don't have a lot to work with. And you can tell these stories feel like very nothing stories, and they're fine, I guess. But yeah, there's like a story about one of the stepsisters actually kind of getting a redemption arc. That sounds nice, but in practice it feels kind of bland and boring. Jacques wants to become a human, and that's weirdly bland and boring. And yeah, Cinderella has to do princessy things, but she doesn't want to do princessy things like every other princess movie you've ever heard in your entire life. I know I've said it a bunch in this part of the review, but honestly, to me, this is the most boring out of all of them. The movies before had elements that actually made me upset or just think the movie was atrocious. This is just the most boring. Next we have Atlantis, Milo's Return, and wow, Disney really wanted a Scooby-Doo ripoff. But yeah, this was going to be a TV show that got canned, and I'm kind of glad they did, because, I don't know, Warner Brothers may have come after Disney going, you basically made Scooby-Doo with your own IPs. They even went so far as to give him an animal sidekick that was not there in the first movie, that's sniffing out clues. Wow, just wow, this feels blatant to me. But even then, like, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Atlantis in general, and I think for what it is, I guess it's okay. The mysteries were kind of fine, but it's also, it just seems like so unabashedly, let's make Atlantis into Scooby-Doo. And that just feels like a dumb premise from the get-go. And in practice, yeah, it still feels like a really dumb premise. So this was just kind of dumb, all things considered. Even though I kind of like the little creature guy. He's kind of fun. Next, we have Pocahontas 2, which, yeah, I've weirdly met a lot of people who legitimately love this movie, mainly because that it fixes a lot of the historical problems that the first movie had. Like, you know, she's now not falling in love with John Smith anymore because in reality that didn't happen. And, you know, she actually goes to England at this time. And yeah, I guess, sure, give it a couple notes for being historically accurate, but it feels weird when your first movie wasn't historically accurate, so you're having to retcon everything that happened in the first movie to then make it historically accurate. So the first movie is going to make the historical people mad, but the second one will make them happy even though they still gotta retcon everything, so they're still adding stuff that's not historically accurate. But then you make the people who liked the first movie, who would probably come watch the sequel, unhappy because now you're taking away everything that they liked because now you're making it historical when the first movie wasn't. I don't know. I feel like they should have gone all in, one or the other, either really make it historically accurate from the get-go or just make it your own thing. This half and half just feels needlessly complicated and weird. But I did really like that one song that she says, now where do I go from here? I actually sing that song a lot. That is a good song. Next up, we've got Brother Bear 2. And yeah, Brother Bear 2 is a movie that exists. I feel like nothing towards this movie. I guess the premise isn't terrible, it just feels kind of predictable. I feel like with these movies, it's, oh, did the character have a love interest in the first movie? No. The sequel is they get a love interest. We're calling it a day. Let's throw in some for the moose, too. Equal opportunity for all single guys. Except for Coda, he's a child. That'd be weird. And I feel like that's the whole movie. They could have done a little bit more with the idea of like, oh, Coda feeling like he's been displaced because of the new girl in his life, but I don't know. It feels like they did nothing with this and it felt very underdone. Yeah, it feels boring and by the numbers and not a lot happened. So yeah, I don't really have much to say about this one. Next up, we have Lady and the Tramp 2. And to be honest, I think the idea of this has a lot of merit. Like the idea of Tramp having a son who wants to get out of domestic life and wants to go out and see everything. That feels very fitting. But then everything about it feels so contrived to like make this story happen. Like for some reason, Tramp can't talk about the fact that he used to be a street dog and he's kept that from Scamp forever. And yeah, why did he do that? And then when Scamp does escape, he ends up running into the exact same gang that Tramp used to run around with, that we conveniently never saw in the first movie and had no recollection of because Tramp never mentioned it. I mean, I guess it's not impossible to think that there could have been a group, but kind of feels out of place. Like maybe even if the story, if they had said that they used to hang around when like Tramp was a pup and he ended up learning from him and growing up and then leaving, maybe, but then you lose that whole revenge aspect that the head junkyard dog has. There could have been something here, but I feel like what we got was just a whole lot of overly contrived story points to force the story to work. Next up, we have Stitch the movie. Basically Disney's Pokemon. So yeah, this was basically the pilot for the Lilo and Stitch TV show, which took a lot of inspiration from Pokemon, since Stitch's Experiment 626. What are the other 625 experiments? And they get loose on Hawaii, and you've got to go find them, rehabilitate them. So instead of gotta catch them all, we gotta rehabilitate them all? I don't know, the premise works. And for what it is, I think it's pretty interesting. Not great, a dramatic step down from the first movie. I do have a bit of nostalgia for this one in the fact that I did watch the show growing up, and I did think the show was fine. I never adored it or thought it was amazing, but I thought it was fine, and I thought this was a fine introduction. I do think Hamsterville is kind of a weak character. I know why he exists to like say like, oh yeah, he was originally Jumba's partner and he feels he has ownerships to the experiments, even the ones that aren't Stitch. And yeah, I get it, but I don't know. I never really got into Hamsterville. Thought he was kind of a dumb character. I honestly think it would have, I'm glad they give most of the villain time to Gantu and, 625. I thought their dynamic was kind of fun and I did enjoy that. So Stitch the movie is fine for a TV show pilot, but yeah, as a movie, it's not that great. Next up, we have Kronk's New Groove. A great idea to actually make your sequel about one of the best characters from the first movie, but unfortunately, that's the best thing I can say about it, is that the idea is great, but the execution is, oh boy. This movie for me was kind of hard to place because I think there's a few moments that do almost redeem it, but then when the film gets off the rails and gets weird, it gets really weird. And it's like the parts I dislike from this, I really dislike, but the parts that I like in this, I do kind of like a lot. But I do think it really just boils down to Kronk. I can't hate a movie where Kronk is the main character, but I also don't love it because of everything else that's not Kronk, and even the stuff that is Kronk. I kind of wanted him to do more and have things that meant more, and yeah, it just kind of felt bleh. This is another 3-story movie, so I thought this might be like an idea to give Kronk his own TV show. Even though Emperor's New Groove got a TV show later, it just wasn't this, which, yeah, as much as I love Kronk, I don't think he could carry one. I'm sorry. Next up, we have Beauty and the Beast, The Enchanted Christmas. Not horrible. There's some parts that I like. I love Tim Curry as this pipe organ. He's a surprisingly fun character. I do kind of like this new angel character who's, out here for every Christmas. But aside from that, I just kind of feel like Belle and the Beast are just, going by the numbers, not doing anything especially bad, but not really anything especially good. It is kind of weird to know that the whole spell thing with the Beast happened on Christmas of all days. I don't know, that just feels kind of lame and forced. Out of all 365 days out of the year, it just so happened to be Christmas. I don't know, it felt a little forced, but I don't know, if you gotta have a Christmas special about Beauty and the Beast, could be a lot worse. Next, we have The Return of Jafar, or as I like to say, Iago the movie. So, yeah, this was the pilot for the Aladdin TV show. And the whole reason this movie exists is because I think they just really wanted Iago to be with the main crew, and they needed a way to redeem him. This is that redemption. For a TV pilot, it's fine. For an actual movie, it leaves a lot to be desired. Yeah, not having Robin Williams as the genie definitely hurt, but you did get Dan Castellaneta, who is wonderful, and he did a really good job on the TV show as well, so can't be too mad, but yeah, as much as I love him, he's not Robin Williams. And I will admit, I am a little biased because I did watch the Aladdin show growing up, and I did really enjoy it. Is this a horrible way to start the series? No, but I can think of quite a few episodes of the show that were way better than this movie. Next, we have Return to Neverland. I know if you really want to get technical, this is not a direct-to-video sequel because it did go to theaters, but let's be real here. It's still not made by the main studio. It's still a side project sequel that was gonna go direct-to-video, but they were playing around with theater releases, so it's basically one. Let's be real here. Return to Neverland, I mean, it's okay. The animation is nice, and I guess if you're going to theaters, you gotta be some level of nice. I don't understand why we don't have the crocodile anymore. Why is there now an octopus? I don't get why that's a thing. I do like the idea of Wendy's daughter coming to Neverland and her totally not being into it. And yeah, as somebody who wasn't super big into the first Peter Pan, I actually found some relatability in that, so that actually was kind of nice. But I don't know, nothing else really did much to make this movie stand out to me. The random pop songs just kind of felt weird. I don't know, just there wasn't enough here to really get my attention with it, but not enough for me to totally despise it. Next, we have Leroy and Stitch. This is the ending to the Lilo and Stitch TV show. And for an ending to the TV show, I think it serves its purpose pretty well. I did like this better than Stitch the movie. I think that the series gave them enough time to let this kind of find its own identity away from the first movie and to kind of bring in its own charm. And yeah, this film I think does a good job of exemplifying that. And I do like the character of Leroy. It's kind of fun to have a character that's really gonna give Stitch like a run for his money, being the next experiment and being the one that's stronger than him. And also seeing all the different experiments that they had found and rehabilitated, and like having them all like be together in one big old brawl with the Leroys. That was pretty cool. I gotta give them props for that. Everything else was, fine, I guess. Not really a lot to write home about, but yeah, I gotta give it props that it did a good job finishing off the TV show, even though you could argue the TV show wasn't that great, but I enjoyed it as a kid, so I think it's fine. So hey, if you're still watching, I take it you're enjoying this video. If you could just take a minute, go down, comment, leave a like, and subscribe, that would help out the channel so much. Most of the people who watch the channel are not subscribed, and if you click the bell, you'll never miss an upload. We got more impression videos, more Disney rankings, more talking about animation. We got a lot of cool stuff coming down the road. You don't want to miss it. All right, now back to the ranking. Next up, we have Tarzan and Jane, which is kind of a weird entry because usually if it's 3 episodes of a TV show like this one is, the TV show never came to air. But The Legend of Tarzan did. And these are 3 episodes that just straight up aired. So why did they try to release this as a sequel? There were other packs of like, you know, animated shows based on movies that got releases straight to DVD, but they were marketed as that. It's like, hey, watch 3 episodes of the TV show. But this one is trying to pass itself off as a sequel. This was a weird time. I can't hate this. I loved the first Tarzan, and I do have a really strong connection to the Tarzan TV show. I watched it a ton growing up, and yeah, considering this is episodes to a TV show that I love as a kid, I can't hate it. Although, yeah, the framing device is dumb, which is why it goes down pretty low. And yeah, if you're trying to market this as a sequel, it's dumb because it's barely a sequel. Personally, I'd say just skip this and watch the Legend of Tarzan TV show. The show itself was way better as a whole. Next up, we have 101 Dalmatians 2. I guess this one was fine, you know? I'm having a hard time thinking of things that I truly disliked about this. I liked Thunderbolt. I really loved Jason Alexander as this corgi character. Okay, he was probably my favorite part in the whole thing. I did like seeing one of the Dalmatians having like an identity crisis, like who am I when I'm not compared to like all the rest of my siblings. There was a really cool idea here. And while I don't think this was executed poorly, it could have been a lot stronger, and I did like Cruella's like spiral into insanity throughout the movie. Yeah, I guess for what it is, it's pretty good. Next up, we have Bambi 2. To me, this was probably the most interesting premise of probably any of the direct-to-video sequels. In the first movie, we kind of fast forward between Bambi losing his mom and him becoming an adult deer. And it's really cool to be able to see those years where Bambi is growing up with his dad, the differences that he has to adjust to. And having Sir Patrick Stewart be his dad, that's a really cool casting. And I think there are parts of this that gave me the stuff I was looking for, but then there's a lot more that feels like they squandered what could have been like the most amazing premise ever for one of these. Not enough to completely tank the film for me, but enough to knock it down quite a few notches. Like, they really could have made this something special, going into like, you know, what it means to be the prince of the forest and having to struggle with that, but really it just kind of falls into the same trope with so many other shows and cartoons with, you know, the dad who takes his job too seriously and needs to learn how to let go and hang out with his kid. It just kind of got really formulaic. They do have glimpses of that, and when the glimpses do show up, They are intriguing and they are really entertaining, but they don't last for long. And then most of the time it's just, you know, normal kid stuff or the same tired trope you've seen a million times, which kind of feels weird that the great prince of the forest is dealing with it. But also the animation looks really good. I'm gonna give him that too. Next, we have Aladdin King of Thieves, the ending to the Aladdin TV show, which once again, kind of like Leroy and Stitch, I feel like this did a really good job of capturing the charm of the TV show, but also elevating a little bit to make it like a big climactic ending. It answered a lot of questions about Aladdin that nobody knew. It brought Robin Williams back as the genie, so that was a nice touch. Having John Rhys Davies play Aladdin's dad was, a wonderful touch. But as much praise as I'm giving it, it's still the ending to a TV show, and because of that, I still have to mark it kind of low because, yeah, it's gonna have TV show stakes with TV animation for a TV show budget. And for what they had to work with, I think it's pretty impressive. But yeah, if you're still comparing this as a sequel to the first Aladdin, yeah, it's still a couple notches down. Next up, we have Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. I promise I'm gonna get through this review without talking a whole lot about Lightyear because I've been comparing these a lot lately. Buzz Lightyear of Star Command is the premise. What did Andy watch to get him excited about Buzz Lightyear in the first place? And this was the show that Disney Toons came up with. This was the pilot for the show Buzz Lightyear Star Command that did come out and it did air. And it was a lot of fun. It was just unabashedly like a Saturday morning cartoon. You just saw Buzz Lightyear go on all these random quests with his crew to go do Star Command things, protect the galaxy, stop the evil Emperor Zurg. It's kind of by the numbers, sure, but at least it's a fun by the numbers. Like, the characters are fun and engaging. I love Booster, Mira, XR. They're a lot of fun. Booster was always my favorite. I loved him. And yeah, I was a kid when this came out, and I at least had fun with it. It definitely wasn't my favorite show. And also, yeah, I can't even remember any kids that this was their favorite show or anything like that. But I also don't know any kids who disliked it either. So it was just fun. And I totally could see Andy actually liking this show, but then hating the Lightyear movie. I'm sorry, I said it. Okay, we're moving on. Next, we have The Little Mermaid, Ariel's Beginning. I don't know why I like this movie as much as I do, because on paper, I should be really annoyed by this. It's kind of an absurd premise. They basically just made Footloose, but, you know, with mermaids. This is all a prequel to the first movie, and like King Triton has banned all music from Atlantica, even though in the first movie, Sebastian is literally his court composer. Yeah, the premise doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but I don't know if it's just a mixture of the animation, Jodie Benson and Samuel E. Wright's performances, the general character that they bring to it, the writing for the characters. I don't know, there's a charm here that I kind of like. I'm not gonna say I like this as much as the first movie, not by any means, but I don't know, I just find it weirdly enjoyable. Or it could just be Benjamin. I don't know, I just really like Benjamin. I think he's a fun character. Next up, we have The Jungle Book 2, and yeah, for a sequel following one of my favorite Disney animated movies, it's not bad. Definitely not nearly as good as the first movie. And yeah, it definitely is missing a few key characters. I really don't know why King Louie didn't show up at any point, but, you know, for what it is, it's not bad. I think the casting with Haley Joel Osment as Mowgli and John Goodman as Baloo were inspired choices. They fit the characters beautifully. I think the premise makes a lot of sense. Baloo would absolutely miss the dog out of Mowgli, and Mowgli would completely miss Baloo and the jungle. It's all he's ever known. So yeah, having this meeting of the two together again, even though everyone around them keeps telling them no, just makes for an interesting story, in my opinion, that makes sense. But there are a few mishaps, like they didn't explain enough about the world, in my opinion. It kind of jarred me out of the movie when Shanti just started talking to Baloo like every human can now just talk to animals. With that established, it's like in Tarzan if Clayton just walked up to Kerchak and just started having a conversation over tea. I'm like, I don't understand what's happening right now. I also wasn't the biggest fan of this Vulture character. I think he was kind of more annoying than anything else, but I guess harmless overall. He was kind of easy to ignore. Shere Khan was still intimidating. I wish he played a bigger role and was more intimidating, but served it fine here. Thought Bagheera was fine. The elephants kind of felt like they had nothing to do, although I thought they did a good job incorporating Kaa. And yeah, no King Louie. I have no idea why he wasn't included. I think he would have fit the scene with the WILD song really well, but oh well. And I did like meeting the new human characters, although I didn't find them nearly as interesting as the animal ones. Shanti I thought was fine, and Rajan, although he got on the edge of annoying once or twice, he was fine overall. But yeah, seeing all the rest of these direct-to-video sequels and seeing what this could have been, I think the Jungle Book fans got off pretty good with this one. Next up, we have The Little Mermaid 2. Once again, I don't know why I like this one as much as I do, just like the other Ariel movie. Like this one, I should dislike it even more. The concept is painfully obvious. You know, Ariel couldn't go to the human world and now her daughter wants to go to the sea. You know, just do total parallels of the parent. And you know, why get a new bad guy? Just say Ursula's got a crazy sister, give her a shark, and bam, you're good to go. On all accounts, this should be boring, and I should not care about it, and I should not enjoy it, but yeah, it went pretty high in the ranking because I do like it. Once again, I don't know if it's Samuel L. Wright and Jodie Benson. I just adore their performances. I like Tara Strong as Melody. I like the new characters Tip and Dash, even though they didn't really do a whole lot in the movie. I still thought they were fun. Just, I don't know, something about this clicked with me. I don't know what it is about the Little Mermaid sequels that just clicks with me. Maybe because the Little Mermaid is my favorite princess. I will admit, and it is my favorite princess movie, so yeah, okay, I'm starting to see a little bit of that bias now. There's a charm to it that I just can't ignore, and I come back to it every so often going, yeah, this was a fun time. Next, we have Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time. I know some people claim this to be like the best direct-to-video sequel just because of how off the walls and crazy it gets, and yeah, it does get off the walls and crazy, and it is one of the better ones, but I can't put it at number 1. But hey, it at least made it in my top 10. But there are some great moments. I love just the fact that Prince Charming just jumps out of a window like it's nothing. I love how he recognizes how weird it is that he's talking to mice. For a premise as stupid as it is, just Lady Tremaine getting the magic wand and going back in time to stopping everything from happening, it's weirdly entertaining. It's a dumb idea, but they throw everything they have into it, which is so much fun to see. So this is definitely one of the better ones. So if you don't watch any direct-to-video sequels, at least watch this one. It's ridiculous, it's off the walls, and that's kind of the best thing about it. And if you've ever wanted a Disney movie for people to question, why is everyone singing? This is one that does it, and there's definitely some memorable moments here. Now we've made it to the top 5. And starting us off at number 5 is Tarzan 2. Now this is a movie that kind of surprises me. It's a smaller movie from the first one, but you can tell it knows it is, and it's leaning into that. It's coming up with a premise that feels big for our character and makes him look within himself and his emotions pretty deeply, but it doesn't need a big, grand, overarching story to make it happen. The story follows Tarzan as he tries to figure out who he is. He knows that he slows the apes down and he doesn't like that. He wants to figure out what makes him unique and special. And he stumbles across this old ape named Zugor who begrudgingly helps him come up with what he is. You could argue that it's really not necessary because the first movie basically already describes this journey. This is just giving more elaboration into it. But hey, just because it's unnecessary doesn't mean it still can't be good or fun. I really like the character that we have in Zugor here. Played wonderfully by George Carlin, might I add, who was surprised at how good he was in this family-friendly animated movie. Though I'll admit, I am a bit of a sucker for the grump who ends up really showing that he's got a big heart. That gets me almost every time. But he was a lot of fun. I really love the 2 big apes that we deal with who are scared of the Zugor. The thing that I love most about this movie is that it knows it can't live up to the first movie, and it's not trying to, it's just trying to be good supplemental stuff to the movie. And I can really respect that, and I think it does it pretty well. I like the song that Phil Collins gave us in this as well. And I'm also just a sucker for Tarzan, so I realize this could be a little biased. But yeah, I think you should definitely check out Tarzan 2 if you haven't. Next up, we have Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. I know this may surprise some of you guys that this isn't right up at the top because of my very biased love for the Lion King, but I've had a bit of a long and varied history with Lion King 2. One of the biggest things you gotta know is this was actually the first direct-to-video sequel that I saw of any movie. And I remember I was so excited when I heard there was a sequel to my favorite movie, and I convinced my mom to go get it in the store, and we brought it home, and yeah, it was dramatically worse than the first one. And just that initial shock of how bad the direct-to-video sequels were to the main movie hurt the most here for me. But even though, weirdly enough, as a kid, I still watched it a lot, even though I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I just wanted more Lion King. But over time, I really softened on it, especially after I watched a lot of the other direct-to-video sequels and saw just how bad this sequel could have been. I look more fondly on it now, going, hey, it could have been a lot worse. We did get some good songs. We got some good characters. Hey, The Lion King made it out pretty good. Next up, we have the extremely goofy movie. I really appreciate the direction that this film went. I really liked how they continued the story from the first movie. You can clearly see that they've grown and their relationship has matured, but as Max goes off to college, that needing his own independence is going through the roof. And yeah, you absolutely go through that when you're going off to college. And then that's when the parents' desire for the kid grows even more. It is such a natural progression for their relationship to show this area of his life. And then having Goofy actually go to the same college as him, oh, it creates such a unique dynamic that I think is really intriguing. Now, of course, it is still a direct-to-video sequel, so we got some weird stuff. I don't understand why the X Games specifically are, as shoehorned in as they are. It's not horrendous seeing them here or anything, but it is really distracting, and I don't know, I think the movie just would have benefited without it. And also, I get that Goofy went to college in the 70s, but I do think it's kind of weird that they harped so heavily on that decade for so long in this movie, especially when the first movie was such an anthem for the 90s. This could have really been an anthem for like the 2000s, although I think this came out like 2001, so I guess that culture hadn't been quite established yet, so okay, that kind of makes sense. And the culture in the late 90s, early 2000s was really heavy into extreme sports, so okay, now X Games makes sense. Darn it, extremely goofy movie, why do you make sense when I don't want you to? But yeah, I never thought they'd make a sequel to the first Goofy movie, and for what they gave us, this was a surprising step in a good direction. Not perfect, but really, really good. At number 2 on the list, we have the third and final Lilo & Stitch movie, Lilo & Stitch 2, Stitch Has a Glitch. If I had to describe Lilo & Stitch 2 in one word, it would be sincere. Out of all the Disney direct-to-video sequels, this movie just feels the most sincere. It feels like a group of people who legitimately adored the first movie got together and said, let's do our absolute best to match the animation style the best that we can. Let's try to make a story that makes sense in the world that's been established, but let's also keep it small and make the relationship with the characters the center of everything. And because of that, I think that there is a charm to this that no other direct-to-video sequel can touch. Although it's not my number 1, it's really close to it. And every time I watch it, I'm surprised by how heartfelt this is. I'm surprised by how emotional I get watching this. 'Cause yeah, there's a lot of stuff that should bother me. There's this whole unnecessary side plot with Pleakley and David, which is kind of dumb, but I don't really care. It doesn't bother me here. The ending is totally a Deus Ex Machina and they don't explain it, but I don't care. It's emotionally what I want, and I'm emotionally moved every time I see it, which doesn't make sense, but I do. And the biggest one is the fact that Jumba refuses to tell the rest of the family that there's something going on with Stitch, which would fix so many issues going on. There's no reason he can't tell anybody about it. He'll tell Pleakley, but even tells Pleakley he can't tell anybody, but there's no reason why he can't tell anybody. It's not gonna harm anything, it would just make everyone's lives easier. But for some reason, it emotionally makes sense to me. I don't think I've ever had a movie like this where I can see so many problems and yet none of them bother me. I just think the emotion is that strong and so sincere, I can look past all of it. It's kind of special. And that's why Lilo and Stitch 2 is at number 2. And the number 1 direct-to-video sequel is Lion King 1.5. Yeah, if you watch my Lion King ranking, this is no surprise because I said it right in there that this is my favorite direct-to-video sequel. I'm not going to go too far into this because I've already talked a whole lot about it on my Lion King ranking. But yeah, the premise is still fantastic. If the first movie was loosely based on Hamlet, stick with Shakespeare stuff, the second movie was basing off of Romeo and Juliet, and here you base it on Rosen and Guildenstern Are Dead, which is like a spin-off book to Hamlet, and you see where the two side characters were doing throughout the events of Hamlet. Do that with Timon and Pumbaa. It's a brilliant idea, and I thought it was executed very, very well. And obviously, it's still retelling my favorite story just from a different point of view. I have to love it to a certain degree. It's unabashedly just fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but still puts in just enough heart to, like, you know, have some substance between, like, Timon and his mom. But even Timon and Pumbaa have some good moments as well. And heck, even Timon and Pumbaa and Simba have a couple moments too. Although I will admit, for a while there, Lilo and Stitch 2 and Lion King 1.5, they have gone back and forth a couple times about which one's my favorite. So right now, Lion King 1.5 is still my favorite. Lilo and Stitch 2 could outrank it one day. So that's all I've got for the ranking. Let me know in the comments. Did you agree? Did you disagree? Let me know. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!